Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of Fan/Fiction with Andrew/Zach. I'm Zach Dunsing.
And I'm Andrew Gum.
Today we're going to briefly visit Neo Springfield.
And I am going to wax rhapsodical about Ginny Weasley.
And I forgot to tell you my Harry Potter joke during the episode, so I'm going to tell it to you now.
Alrighty.
How does Harry Potter get down the hill?
How?
Walking. JK, rolling.
Oh, you saucy minx. That's a good one.
Don't ever call me that again.
So should I have our business cards where it's Andrew Gum and Saucy Minx sent back to the printers? You saucy minx.
That or we're just going to have to hire a saucy minx.
Yeah. Ugh.
If you're out there, we're hiring.
Yeah. If your last name is Minx and your first name is Saucy, then you have, probably a strained relationship with your parents.
And we're hiring. Sorry, I know you didn't want to talk about this, but I like that you referred to the argument you got into with your wife earlier as an impromptu argument.
Yeah.
They're all impromptu.
No. Some people really work their way up to them. They're planning it all day. They're like
some people pencil
for a
it in.
Debate meet, but not me. We just dove right in.
Yeah, well, it happens.
And I'm terrible, man. Like both of us are fully non-confrontational. Like we would never fight with anybody except for the other most non-confrontational person in the world. So it feels doubly bad because both of us are like trying so hard not to hurt each other's feelings the whole time. Yeah. And then I'm feeling terrible because I feel like I am hurting her feelings, but then I'm feeling like I'm being emotionally manipulated. And then I'm like, that's hurting my feeling. It's a mess.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sarah and I get into fights, but it's always late at night and it's always like in the morning. We're just like, wait, were we arguing about what color our couch is?
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, exactly. This was dishes. We were arguing about dishes, and it was me. This is my fault. Like, I brought it up, and we always fight about dishes whenever the word is mentioned. There's just an unspeakable word.
Dishes. The chore that will not be named.
Yeah, seriously, like Lord Dishamort.
I feel like we can do better than that.
Yeah.
Tide Podamort.
Tide Podamort's way better. That feels good. I'm thinking of like Tide Podrick Payne. That's from that's a Game of Thrones reference.
That's Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Anyway.
We probably shouldn't dwell on this.
Yeah. It's just giving me high blood pressure.
The single most ludicrous argument I ever got into with my wife. I think this was before we were married, but essentially we'd been drinking all day. There's no easy way to put it.
Yep. That's a good way to start.
Yeah, we went to like a cookout or something or whatever, and it was around Halloween, and people had left pumpkins in the hallways, like around our apartment.
Nice.
Sorry, they didn't leave pumpkin. People put out pumpkins doors for the season. So like we were coming in, and I grabbed one of them and snuck it under my shirt because I was gonna like surprise her with a pumpkin, I guess. When she's not looking, I sneak the pumpkin out and I set it on the our coffee table. And then she sees it and is like, why is that? Why'd you put that pumpkin there? And then I just commit to pretending that pumpkin has been in our apartment for the past 6 months. And I do this for about 20 minutes, and then it just turns into this huge argument about trust and deception.
Well, yeah. Well, see, here's the thing, and this is something I truly do believe, and I tell about with my students, which is why I'm at fault for this argument that we just had, is that even like a little sarcastic comment, like a little deception or like teasing someone in a way that is supposed to be lighthearted.
Just at the wrong time.
Yeah, exactly. If there's even like a whiff of meanness to it, like that is transferred. So you'll see people like they'll laugh, but then they'll like close up. So even if you're like teasing someone in jest, especially when they're feeling vulnerable, then it is just a recipe for disaster. Especially the more you care about somebody, because those little bits of like mean-spiritedness really transfer. It's really conductive when you care about somebody.
Yeah, I guess maybe we should just try not to be dicks to our wives.
Yeah, I think that all of America needs to learn that lesson. And wives, sisters, mothers, girlfriends, just anybody with 2 X chromosomes. They've already got enough going on.
Yeah. Although, just like real quick for the record, could our wives stop being dicks to us as well, please?
Yeah, seriously, Sarah. Just let the pumpkin thing go.
Let the pumpkin thing go.
On this one, Zach.
Yeah.
You should be on Lindsay's side for the dish thing, though.
I assume if it's dishes, I'm on her side. Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. So this week, I'd like to go second because I've got what I think is the best fan fiction ever written by a human being.
Hey, well, you don't have to like undersell it.
No, I'm trying to shoot you straight. Like, this is definitely the best that I've ever read. I wept full-blown tears. I was amazed by it, and it opens up a whole other conversation about fan fiction as a medium that I had never considered. So, yeah. And it should come as a surprise to no one that it is Harry Potter related.
Jesus Christ.
Andrew. I know. I'm not sorry. So
here's the thing. This is your last one. Right? This is it. I'm cutting you off.
I'm sorry.
At least until the second season.
I just keep coming back to the Rowling teat. But yeah, so I'd like to go second if that's cool, because I'm going to vamp on it.
That's good because I got a pretty good one, but it's not the best of anything that's ever been made. So
great.
That seems appropriate.
Perfect. Let's start there.
Yeah. So are you familiar with Bartkira?
Bartkira?
Bartkira. So you perhaps have seen the anime from I think came out in 1986. I also just kind of associate all the things I love as coming out the year I was born. Aliens, Akira, a bunch of movies that didn't come out in 1986.
Right.
Jurassic Park, 100% not 1986.
But it feels like it came
almost
out
a decade off.
Yeah.
So yeah, Akira was an anime that came out in the mid-'80s. It was based on a manga that came out a few years earlier than that, written by Katsuhiro Otomo.
Yeah, you actually sent me a book of like the artwork from the manga, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it at home. And I've seen the anime. I haven't read the manga, but it's amazing. The anime is like deeply disturbing to a 13-year-old boy like me who watched it.
Still, I mean, I think it's still like conceptually it's very high and it's very interesting. The animation is flawless. The design is some of my favorite of all time. And it really, like I said, it's based on the manga series, but it only covers about half of it generously, really probably about a third of it. But the manga is like 6 pretty big volumes, about 300 or 400 pages. They're incredible. It's one of my favorites of all time. And somebody took that and mashed it up with The Simpsons, obviously.
Bartkira. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm just paint me a picture. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so it's incredible. Like, so basically it was based on all this work that an artist named Ryan Humphreys made, and his website, or at least some of the work that I could find of him, is called withpencilinhand.tumblr.com. So he had done all these very loose, like some of them kind of seem to be pencil and watercolor, and some they're sort of like loose interpretations of the artwork from Akira, but just mashed up with Bart. So that's where it started on this Tumblr page, I guess. And then those were then inspired this guy named Harvey James, his name is James Harvey. His website is harveyjames.tumblr.com. So he then basically orchestrated this project that's been going on for years and years, where they've essentially done a shot-for-shot remake of Akira, panel for panel, page for page, just with a sort of hybrid look of The Simpsons and Akira, and all the characters are Simpsons characters. And it's
so awesome. And
it's amazing.
So dorky that I am just astounded. That's great news.
I think they've been working on it for like 10 years. And
yeah, and it has been time well spent, I assume.
Yes, it is. And it's really cool, too, because there's over 300 artists have worked on it. You'll have like 5 or 6 pages that are an artist and 5 or 6 more pages that are an artist. So I read as much of it as I could get through, and it was like I got through most of the first volume. Like I said, there's 6 of them. And so there's like 250, 300 pages in that first volume, and it's all just original artwork that a bunch of different artists have made that is a retelling of Akira with Simpsons characters. And it's like...
That's great. Who are some of the... Like
who's
matchups?
who?
Yeah, give me who's
great.
Who.
Okay, so like the 2 main characters, arguably the main characters, Kaneda and Tetsuo. Kaneda is the guy with the red, super cool red motorcycle.
Bike.
Yeah.
That bike.
I'm pretty sure makes an appearance in Ready Player One, and
it looks like it, and it looks so cool.
Yeah, I think that we might have to just like do an entire episode about Ready Player One.
Yeah. Which is all about fan service, the book especially. The book is just all references.
It's references
together,
the book.
Didn't we?
No, I haven't actually listened to it or read it. I've read snippets.
Oh, you weren't there. It was with your replacement for the...
It was a JP thing.
So those of you that are listening, yeah, we do a traveling children's show where I dress up as a robot and Zach works another robot from backstage. That's a true story.
Can I make a caveat there? We do not do this show. We did this show about 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a big part of when we were first like becoming friends and making stuff together. That was the insane circumstances around which we became friends. And so on those trips, we listened to a bunch of audiobooks. And on one of those trips that Zach wasn't there is when I listened to Ready Player One. So proceed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the Tetsuo and Kaneda is Bart, obviously.
Makes sense.
Tetsuo is Milhouse, so they're 2 best friends at Akira. The Colonel, who's trying to like oversee everything and starts a coup and is trying to stop all the powers that be, that's Principal Skinner.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Bart / Kaneda's love interest, her name's Kay in Akira. Well, she's more than a love interest. She's another like pivotal character in this whole resistance thing / what's going on with Akira and all that stuff. But her name's Kay in the book. It's the character name from The Simpsons is Laura Powers, which I didn't recognize. But then once I looked up images, she's that older girl who like babysat Bart, who he had a crush on, and she dated Jimbo and.
Huh. Yeah, I can't place that character in my brain.
She was voiced by one of the actresses from Roseanne, but
okay,
yeah,
cool.
Right. It was the first like Bart's crush episode.
Who is Groundskeeper Willie? That's my one question. Who's
okay. No, Groundskeeper Willie is the like PE coach that punches all the students in the face when they're being disciplined.
Oh.
So there's a great panel in the Bartkira of just Groundskeeper Willie punching Bart and his whole gang, which is played by like Jimbo, Kearney, Nelson. And
got it.
And Dolph, which is like the long-haired kid.
Yeah.
Ryu, the resistance fighter that gets like shot up in the beginning. That's Ned Flanders.
That's funny.
Yeah, there's a fully animated trailer of this. It's like basically shot for shot the trailer from Akira, but with the Bartkira animation style. It's super sweet. And there's this incredible scene of just Ned Flanders getting shot to clumps of blood, like just getting shot to pieces.
That is amazing. And
which is a very iconic scene from the movie.
Is it well animated?
Oh, it's like great.
Oh, that's great. If we ever get,
it's like it looks legit.
Like where we're providing links, that feels like something we need to provide a link to. We should provide links. Have we talked about providing links?
Yeah, we don't. You don't do that in the podcast. It'll be on. We'll put it out on the Instagram or on the website.
That sound like things we need to do in the future, which sounds hard, but I'm listening. Let's keep going.
So the only last couple of things are that Lisa is basically this like religious figure that kind of pops up in the movie, but really has like an integral role in the comic book. The head of the Joker gang, who they fight at the beginning of the movie, and who have a bigger role in the comic book, is Krusty the Clown. Obviously,
that makes yeah.
And then you forgot to ask the most important question.
Sideshow Bob?
Who's Akira?
Oh, wait a minute. Akira Homer?
Interestingly enough, I haven't found Homer in it at all.
Really?
Or Marge, actually.
Maggie?
Ralph Wiggum.
Ralph Wiggum. That makes sense. Kind of little and weird, but then also phenomenally, cosmically powerful.
Yes,
like
and also, like Ralph Wiggum. Also, Akira doesn't actually have a huge presence in the movie, but he's a full-blown character in the comic books.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, that does sound amazing, and that sounds like an incredibly loving, detailed homage to two things that are burned into the consciousness of the world.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to say is, I was looking at Ryan Humphrey's blog, the guy who originally created all that stuff, and people had been asking him if Katsuhiro Otomo had seen any of this. And he said that he basically got in contact with somebody who was selling a bunch of Otomo's prints, who then showed him some of the Bartkira stuff, and Otomo laughed, didn't really get it, but his son thought it was amazing.
Great. Hey.
Which is great. It also just brings up something that I think I would really like to pursue in the future, which is what does J.K. Rowling think of this stuff?
Wait a minute. Do you have a line to J.K. Rowling? Because if we could get her on the podcast, I feel like 9 more people would listen.
Yeah, no, she's just hanging out on the couch right now. She's eating a Slim Jim.
JK, guys, JK.
JK. No, but what are the originators of this, the creators of this content? Do they have an opinion of some of this stuff? How do they feel about it?
Yeah,
that's something I'd like to pursue.
Because I bet that would vary wildly from creator to creator, because I can't imagine a better compliment than a ton of people taking the world that you created and running with it, because that means that they liked it enough to continue writing in that world, whereas some people might be offended that it's like a bastardization of their creation, but I think it's a huge compliment.
I could see that going both ways. Yeah. So that's what I'm curious about.
How would you feel about it if you made something that people made into fan fiction?
If I made anything at all that people picked up, it'd be great.
Yeah, I feel the same.
I'd be in heaven. Well,
speaking of J.K. Rowling, if you're down with me segueing into my thing.
Yes, of course.
Cool. So there are 2 things that are going to sound incredibly heavy and emotional that I'm about to say. One is the title of the author. The creator name is Dirgewithoutmusic. And the 8-part series that she wrote is called We Must Unite Inside Her Walls or We'll Crumble from Within. That sounds really heavy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's very heavy. The whole thing, start to finish, is incredibly heavy. The broad strokes concept behind this is there are 8 stories that follow 8 of the female characters in Harry Potter that are not Hermione Granger. So basically all of these female characters who come in and out of Harry's driving story and just kind of pop in and out of these characters. It fills in a bunch of plot holes that are left in the story. Like, we only know about Hannah Abbott that her mom died and she needed to and then she didn't go back to school for a year because her mom had been killed. 8
other mainish characters, I'm assuming, who are also students.
Yeah, all Hogwarts students, exactly. Yeah. The list of the characters are Cho Chang, Hannah Abbott, Pavarti Patil, Ginny Weasley, Pansy Parkinson, Andromeda Tonks, Susan Bones, and of course Luna Lovegood, everybody's favorite.
One of my favorites. I'm a big Ginny Weasley guy, but
me too.
Who is Andromeda Tonks? I think I recognize the other ones.
Yeah. Andromeda Tonks is wait a minute, I didn't actually read that one. I read 6 out of 8. This is embarrassing. You hit me with the one question I don't know. I read every other thing.
Okay.
Shoot. I don't know.
Andromeda Tonks gotta be related to Nymphadora Tonks.
Oh, yes. So Nymphadora Tonks is Tonks. She's got she can change her appearance and stuff. Yeah, so Andromeda's her mom. She's her cousin. Yeah, cousin of Sirius Black. Left the family, was a black sheep because she married a muggle named Ted Tonks.
Ted? Okay, hang on a second.
Yeah.
So she's related to
Bellatrix Lestrange.
Bellatrix Lestrange.
And what's her name? The Narcissa Malfoy, I believe, was also a black. I think she's a blonde, but she's also a black. So so she gets kicked out of the family. So she's a black sheep. Nailed it.
Nailed it.
And I didn't read that one, but I assume it kind of talks about what it's like leaving the family, because that's what all of these are about. It's like, if we assume that
I'm sorry, follow up before we get into that.
Yeah.
What's the deal with Ted Tonks?
I know, he must be
what's he up to?
Yeah, I mean, he must be like dynamite in the sack, because she is like a rich witch from a family of like rich, powerful, evil witches and wizards, and a dude named Ted Tonks, who has to like sell blenders or something, sweeps her off her feet, and she leaves her whole life to be with a dude named Ted Tonks. Dude is packing heat. That's all I can assume.
That's the only plausible explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I assume. But each one of these stories, it's like, what we know about these characters are these things happen to them. It really dives in deeply about like what that would do to a person, and it shows them from their first person perspective, very much the same way that we follow Harry Potter's perspective in the books. So we get more insight into who they are, and it is genuinely like no bullshit, beautiful. Like, the writing is beautiful. The love for the characters is beautiful. The sort of conversations it's having is incredible. And I'll tell you, part of the reason why it hit me so emotionally probably was because as I was reading it, all the stuff about the shooting in Florida, the Marjorie Stoneman High School shooting, had just happened. And I teach at a high school, so like for that whole week, every day we're meeting with students, and every day like we're having these conversations, we're having after school lockdown procedures, and we're talking about how students are feeling unsafe. And it was an incredibly heavy emotional week naturally at work. And in the event of the books, these students basically deal with a bunch of their friends getting killed at school at the Battle of Hogwarts, and how that leaves emotional scars on them for the rest of their lives is sort of central to these storylines. And it was just really beautiful. And it seems silly, but like it's a really beautiful story about that.
I mean, does it deal with these characters as adults? How much of this takes place after / during the events of the Harry Potter
almost
canon?
All of them are kind of, they pop back and forth, but most of them are from the perspective of like a retrospective. So they
gotcha, like
they're grown up, they're dealing with all the stuff that's going on in their lives, and they're dealing with these emotional scars. So these are huge, long stories. I can't even begin to do them justice. But so like the main points.
Yeah, can you give me some highlights of for each character? Obviously not Tonks, because you didn't read that one.
Yeah. So over emotional in defense of Cho Chang. It talks about how in the books Cho Chang is like always crying, but then she also steps up to the plate and joins Dumbledore's army and fights back against evil. And it's about that.
Well, yeah, because she had to do all of that after her boyfriend was murdered.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. And she loses like all her friends and is kind of like socially pariahed by that.
Right.
Because her boyfriend gets murdered. She immediately starts sort of dating the dude that was there with her boyfriend when he got murdered.
Oh, you mean Voldemort?
Yeah. She immediately starts dating Wormtail.
Right.
And she starts dating Harry Potter, and then breaks up with Harry Potter, so she doesn't even have that anymore, and people are all mad at her for moving on, but she still keeps on doing the right thing anyway, and is a character that kind of gets shunted aside in the overall narrative. But
yeah, that's an interesting thing, because that sort of happens in the book, where like Harry and Ron are trying to understand like what the hell's going on with Cho Chang, and then Hermione explains it to them and tries to explain to them like this very complex set of emotions that she's sort of going through in the state she's in, and they're both just kind of like,
what?
Oh, nobody could feel all that. Like, that couldn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like, how could you like feel two things at the same time? It's like, shut up, Ron, and marry me later, Hermione says.
Right.
But yeah.
Which is like, it would almost like qualify as a sort of commentary on the audience of who's reading it at that time of like, yeah, that does sound extremely complex, but we do not want to get into that. Just show us more like
cool spell.
Discovering magic powers
with
a slight sexual tension.
Yeah, seriously. And so she as a character, as we're like dealing with those, we dive all the way into those complicated emotions. So
interesting.
She's trying to do the right thing, but she's terrified and she's like shaking all the time and crying and is losing everybody and is terrified, but she's doing it anyway, which in a way makes her even more heroic than everybody else because she's been kind of socially cast out and is very acutely afraid, but decides to do the right thing. Yeah, exactly.
She's also not a Gryffindor.
Yeah,
either,
which
I feel like she's like kind of an outsider in that group as well.
Totally. And they're always and they have multiple of these stories. They talk about how the book series is very pro Gryffindor. It's basically Gryffindor and Ravenclaw are the good guys. Slytherin is the bad guys, and Hufflepuff, like, who gives a shit? Like,
they're just a bunch of weirdos that, like, maybe we'll have a play written about them someday.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I feel like there's no way we can get into all of this, but how's my girl Luna do after the Wizarding War or the Battle for Hogwarts?
So she does great. So Luna, here, let me roll.
Perfect.
Let me roll.
All
down.
I needed to hear.
Yeah, she's indefatigable. She like goes out and is still doing like her dad's work, trying to find magical creatures. Still friends with everybody. I'll read you a couple things from her.
Great.
There's so many good lines. It's crazy. It's called Loony in defense of Luna Lovegood. Okay, so one of the things about Luna Lovegood that's mentioned, I think, only one time is that her mom was working on inventing new charms, and at one point, she was trying to invent a charm and accidentally blew herself up inside their house. And like Luna found her blown up inside the house. And that's why she can see thestrals and stuff. And it's like this super messed up thing that happened to her in her childhood. Now her dad is this eccentric trying to raise her on his own.
And I'm just going to flat out say he is not equipped for the job.
No. Xenophilius is a weird shut-in.
Sorry, let's just get this out of the way. Xenophilius sounds like what you would call a person, like call a pedophile if you couldn't call them a pedophile.
Yeah, xenophilia is like you want to just touch everybody.
Is it xenophilia when you're afraid of but turned on by people from another country?
Like, yeah, just like anybody who's not like you gives you a just painful erection.
A fearful erection. Fearful arousal in defense of xenophilia.
Yes. So this is one of the things that comes up over and over again. So she studies charms all the time and is super into it. And she says, sometimes your spell will burble green, burble neon purple, and combust in your hands. That will be the last thing you will ever see. Sometimes your spells will go bad. And that kind of keeps coming up, a variation of that over and over again, because she fully has not dealt with the trauma of her mother blowing up in her house. So she's trying to learn these charms and also as a way of getting over her fear of creating new magic because it literally killed her mom. It's like the colors that are associating with it, and you're inside her mind, which is kind of a non-linear mind anyway, and it's just written with a total love of the character. There's one specific part in Ginny Weasley's Lost that I want to read you, just because it's like really great.
Let's hear it.
So Ginny Weasley, Neville Longbottom and Luna Lovegood are kind of the leaders of Dumbledore's army after Harry Potter and Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley go off and they're in a tent looking for Horcruxes. If you don't like Harry Potter, I'm so sorry. This is so dense. But they're kind of the triumvirate that we follow the entire book series. And then there's these other three who are kind of the leftovers, who are like the secret heroes during the Battle of Hogwarts. And so here is a line about those three: Ginny, Neville, and Luna. Or they were something else entirely, the trio who was not golden. They were the unchosen three, the discarded Horcrux and the last Weasley, the brave, broken, backup boy who lived, the loony girl who lost her shoes and had more friends in Thestrals than in her common room. Which is just really good. That's just a good sentence. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is good. I mean, what can you tell me more about this author?
So, Dirgewithoutmusic. This is coming from my sister. Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, your sister, not Sarah, my wife.
Yeah, that could get confusing. Though that would be fun if it was both. We'd be family, Zach.
Barf.
Yeah, you should stick with your wife. She's great too. My sister's great, but so's your wife. So Dirgewithoutmusic has been absolutely prolific in her writing about Harry Potter. She's written so many pieces of Harry Potter fan fiction that my sister assures me is all very good. She has also apparently written other just fiction, original fiction of her own that has been published and is apparently doing okay, because she's clearly a very talented author. So whoever you are, Dirgewithoutmusic, I don't know your real name. Good work.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah. All one word, all lowercase, on her birth certificate.
Absolutely. Okay, so then this brings up, I think, the obvious question, something that we've been sort of getting at for a while. What is this? Like, this fan fiction, no matter how good, no matter how eloquently written, is still fan fiction, right? Like, it's still, no matter what, it's still Harry Potter characters.
Yeah.
How far does that merit extend? Like, is this an art form, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Sure. So I've been actually, because of these, I've been thinking about this question due to reading this. And before now, I would have said that fan fiction is, in that it is a creative thing, it is a work of art, but because it is derivative of already existing work, I would have kept it in my mind as a lesser form. And even though we were coming into this whole project very open-minded, wanting to learn, it wasn't until I read these that...
I think I maybe said this before, like, we appreciate the pure creative impulse of this whole thing, and I think that idea at its root is essentially what making art is. You're making something that serves no purpose in this world. It's just you're making it because you want to make it and people can connect to it.
Yeah, exactly. Other than to connect to other people. And until I read this, I would have said that, you know, that makes it, because you're already building on an existing foundation, that you didn't do that work yourself. Therefore, it is somehow lesser than. And that was a bias that I had.
There is, and we should probably get into this in detail later, but there's a great history and tradition of appropriation in the art world as well.
Absolutely. And this,
and
to me...
copy.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think about it, like, so many archetypical characters are based on just previous literary characters. I mean, basically the whole hero's story, the journey that all of your favorite fictional characters come upon, is borrowed again and again and again. And so it would be very hard to say, if you look deep enough, that anything is not derivative of something else. And I would now go as far as to say the only difference between this that I just read and like a really brilliant work of literature is that she does not own the copyright to this. Like, it's really actually good on its own. Well, and I would say that
but it's not really good on its own. It doesn't exist on its own.
Sure.
It's really good for the prose, and it's really good in the way it's written, but like, she didn't just write we're assuming it's a she.
It is a she.
I mean, okay.
Sarah told me. So, yeah, it's a she.
Okay. Where, you couldn't just write a tome to loss or pain, and it automatically be received as easily as the way you received it, or your sister received it, or whoever's getting into this is receiving it, because you have that. You've said this before, but you have that buy-in on those characters, and that I hesitate to say that it cheapens it for me, because it doesn't, but there is something to that, right?
No, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm still wrestling mentally with that question, but if I can unpack that question a little bit using an example from this thing that I was reading.
Please do.
The defense of Pavarti Patil is all about what it's like to lose a best friend in a random act of violence and not be able to get over it. So Lavender Brown is a character who dates Ron for a little while and then basically just gets bitten to death by a werewolf, and her body is getting like savaged, and they like blast him away, but he's already killed her. And that's just like one line, and then you just keep going with the Battle of Hogwarts. But that character for all of the books was best friend with another character called Pavarti Patil, who went to the Yule Ball with Ron and Hermione, her and her sister Padma. And so these are just like colorful characters in the background in the story, but
they also suffered dearly as a byproduct to what made Harry Potter a hero.
Exactly. And so you've got these characters. So you've got this character who now is going and doing horror training and has full-blown PTSD and and everything is reminding her of her friend, and she keeps on replaying these memories that she had of her friend, and she knows that she wasn't perfect. She was kind of annoying and self-absorbed and like way too flirty with the boys, but she was like her best friend, and your teenage best friend getting murdered and you finding her body like will leave a scar on you forever. And so the reason why I think that story about loss is worthy, even though it is derivative of something else, is that my buy-in to it, having already known those characters and having an emotional connection to that story from my childhood, makes me feel for her in a way like it's an emotional shorthand. Like when you use a character that you already have a connection to for a love of like some area of fandom or literature, then you already feel them. You already have all the feelings that you felt when you read that book, and now you can apply that and you can go deeper into it. Because you already are starting, like all the foundation has already been laid, so you can just sort of dive in. If you wanted to have the same emotional impact, you'd have to go back and write an entire book and slowly get us to know these characters and show their relationship to one another and make them fun and funny and silly, and then rip the rug out from under us by killing one of them, and then you could start this story. Instead, you can jump in right on this thesis about what it is to live with loss.
Well, I think there's validity to this. Also, the other thing you mentioned is just what's called writing a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is that shorthand there, and that's what makes it so accessible. And I don't know, that's the gray area of the conversation we're having.
Yeah, I know. And it's
interesting. It continues to be interesting.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That, to me, the world of fan fiction, as we're uncovering it, is as variegated as any other area of fiction, because it, like, the quality, the themes, the topics that it wrestles with are just as wide and broad as any other artistic avenue. It's just all based on pre-existing pop culture, I guess. I guess that's what makes it fan fiction, because it's like, if I were to tell a story about the character of Hercules in a modern setting, that's not fan fiction, that's just fiction, even though it's parodying or it's borrowing from a pre-existing character.
I think that would still be fan fiction. It's just not what we typically associate with fan fiction.
Yeah, but then like the Percy Jackson books, aren't those just Greek mythology fan fiction?
Yeah.
I guess.
Isn't the New Testament just Old Testament fan fiction?
Fan fiction. That's good. And Carmen Sandiego, isn't that Old Testament fan fiction too? Touche, my friend. Touche. So yeah, I mean,
I think
this series of stories, I mean, we're getting
here's the
into
thing.
it, and it's too big for me to
here's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that we're hitting the extent of where I feel that we are qualified to talk to some of this stuff. So I think we might need to bring in some Sherpas, some guides.
Yeah. I need to be hoisted onto my sister's back and carried up this mountain, because I think she would actually be a really good person to talk to about this. She pointed it in my direction, and she fills out the nerd corners that I don't fill out, and for that I will always be grateful to her.
I mean, I think it's time to just get some outside voices from across the board.
Great. I think that sounds great. Let's do it. And people at home, if we don't do it in a future episode, then you can point back to this and say that we have bad follow through. So, yeah.
I'll just be happy if there are people at home.
I just like that they're at home.
Not even at home listening to this. Just for the love of God, go home to your family. Or for the love of God, make a family.
Just make a family out of like clay and bits of string. Just what you were saying before about everything is derivative of something, like that's just true. Like all art builds on a fundamental understanding of art, and that comes from looking at other art. And so whatever you do, however wildly original your idea might be, it's still building on a framework that existed before you made it. The line of fan fiction, it seems very clear when you're first looking at it. But when you spend the amount of time that we're spending looking at something, it gets a little bit muddier. To me, at least.
Qualifying line is pretty clear. The qualitative line is not.
Unpack that for me a little bit.
Okay. I mean, I think the line between what makes something fan fiction seems pretty clear.
Sure. Like you're using copyrighted material. Yeah. You have to make a disclaimer at the top. That's a pretty clear qualifying line.
But the whether it's more interesting or important than the source material, or whether all things are not in some way fan fiction, that's murky.
Yeah. And that, I think that once you look past that first line, it's that second line that's more interesting to me. I mean, we're always, whatever we're wrestling with in terms of a story, we're probably at its core talking about some universal theme that has been explored and turned over and over for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like, there aren't any completely new concepts, because even when you're watching that new show, Altered Carbon, and it's a consciousness transferring from body to body in these little like consciousness discs, what you're really talking about is just the rich and the poor, that the rich get richer and the poor don't get a new body when they die.
Yeah, I think we have to figure out a way to have a conversation about this in a way that's more interesting than everything goes back to 7 stories, you know?
Yeah.
I guess that's just that's a given to me, you know?
Yeah, like I hear what you're saying. That's not anything terribly revelatory.
No.
But it does get to a point where it's like, if you're reading something and you're just really enjoying it and you're fully immersed in it, wasn't that the purpose of fiction in the beginning? To like wrestle with a story, like to tell a story? And if the story's good, like,
yes, I mean, I think in the oral tradition, like that's that's where it all began, right? Things happened to us, and then we told tall tales about it, and then it became a story.
Yeah, and then we would come up with new stories.
Is all fiction just fan fiction of human experience?
Yeah, right. But yeah, right? Because fiction exists to talk about reality. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
You think of it as an escape from reality, but really you just needed a little bit of padding to deal with the brutal realities of existence. And so
you need padding to like articulate what you experience, because how you experience something and how somebody else sees that you experience something is not the same thing. But the story that you tell can be very different than one-to-one directly what happened to you, but it can explain it much more clearly to another person. It can create the effect and the feeling of what happened to you much more clearly.
Yeah, I'll take it even one step further and say that like a bizarre trick of human consciousness is to take all the random chaotic things, all the stimulus that is coming into our brain, and we apply stories onto that. We're constantly weaving a narrative of our own existence. We're telling a story about what our life is all the time by interpreting patterns that we're seeing. And so, like, I think that's one of the draws of art and fiction, is because it's just taking that natural human proclivity and spinning it out into something that is tangible or readable or seeable.
I think that, and this is a much bigger conversation, but I think that, so there are like pretty clear sort of qualifiers between what's the difference between art and craft, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we've talked about this a little bit. You had a cool, regurgitate the cool thing that you've told me in the past.
I'll do my best. So craft is sort of, it serves a function. Keep in mind, like, these in no way qualify whether something's good or bad.
Right.
But in very short terms, and there's a lot that goes into this, but like, craft is something that generally sort of serves a function or is based on a tradition, and art is something that is made that has no purpose, is made for the sheer sake of making it, and people can, whether it's good or bad, it's like, it's just something that's made kind of as well as a person can make it. And now that has nothing to do with the craftsmanship of it, i.e. like the skill, the time, that those things don't really necessarily apply to art.
Sure.
But I do think there's something that is rarely talked about when we are talking about art having no function and being ostensibly purposeless, is that I think it actually does have a purpose, and I think it actually is completing a task. I think it's another, albeit abstract, form of communication. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very direct form. I mean, I know I just said it was abstract, and it is idea-wise, but it's a very direct form of communicating from one person to another. Like, what's sort of inside of that person?
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly what, yes, that is touching exactly on what we were talking about, that natural thing that's happening. Like, your mind at work is making a narrative. It is creating a reality specific to you. So when you, Zach, specifically create something, especially a work of art, you are communicating that internal process. And Stephen King even says a thing like, writing is mind control. It's like the only way that you can take your thoughts and put them into someone else's mind is to write them down and have them read them. So yeah, it's a fascinating form of communication, and something that has been so in all cultures throughout all time. Human beings have been creating art and music in fully independent societies. Then it has to be somehow intrinsic to like the human condition. Yeah,
so, I mean, I think sorry, go ahead.
Well, so then I was just thinking, so then to me, it's bizarre in a way that we put these lines up between like greater than or lesser than fan fiction versus...
Well, so that's the ultimate question. I think it came down to when I had this argument with another person. Is the only measure of that, is the only measure of whether it's actually fan fiction or good or bad or whatever, is the only measure of that just success? You know, is it just...
It's just like a copyright law.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, like, who's making money off of it?
Right.
Is that the measurement? Because that doesn't seem like that should be the right measurement of like whether something is valuable or not to us culturally.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Because it's like, okay, so Dirgewithoutmusic made this thing and didn't make a dime off of it. Clearly knowing that she would never make a dime off of it, and made it anyway. So how is that not a valid form of artistic expression? She entered into
How is
this.
that not the most valuable form? You know,
Yeah,
like,
right? Like how raw and pure.
it's so willingly unmotivated by anything else.
Right. To like, that's the stuff that to create something just so that it exists and just to reach out and then to post it for other people who might get something from it. Like, I think that is beautiful because at the end of the day, and this is maybe getting a little far out of field, but like J.K. Rowling will die and she will be remembered for making
bullshit.
Yeah, you're right. She's gonna
look. If anybody's loaded up with Horcruxes, it's J.K. Rowling.
Oh man, she's using Tom Clancy as a Horcrux right now. Is he dead? I don't know if he's dead.
Nobody knows if Tom Clancy even ever lived.
But it's like, what is the measure? So it's like she made $1 billion and then she died, and her books will endure not because she made $1 billion, but because they reached people and they meant something to somebody. So her $1 billion aside, that we can measure her wealth that way, but not the quality of her art that way. Like, you can only measure that by whether or not it connected to a person, whether or not it meant something to somebody.
Arguably immeasurable.
Right. Yeah.
So we're kind of stuck in a loop here.
It's crazy. I know. It's like once you start examining it, it's like basically if you start looking for purpose in things, you can even like get to a point where the search for purpose is purposeless. So.
Look, I think now's a good time to sign off, and we should probably reevaluate whether or not we ever need to make any more podcasts. We need to look deep into the depths of our hearts and ask, is it worth it?
And the answer is definitely no. But the follow-up answer is we will make another one within the next 6 days.
Definitely.
All right, man. Well, good night, Zach.
Good night, Andrew.
Thank you so much for listening to the final episode of Season 1. As always, if you'd like to hear more of our stuff, go to fanfiction.show or anywhere else that you go to get your podcasts. Contact us at xandrew@fanfiction.show. Our Twitter and Instagram are @fanfictionshow. Also, if you'd like to read some of these particularly good ones this week, you can go to the series We Must Unite Within Her Walls or We'll Crumble From Within by Dirgewithoutmusic, and Bartkira by Ryan Humphrey and James Harvey. Also, if you go to bartkira.com, you can donate to charity to support them, which is pretty dope. So do that, and see you next time.